Hello everybody, and welcome to the Friday edition of Video Clips. First thing I'll announce to you is the Ohio Department of Health has partnered with FEMA to create sheltering facilities for people suspected to be exposed to coronavirus who are unable to quarantine at home. Didn't I tell you we were going to have camps? Hasn't everything I've told you since March kind of come true? A director's order published on the official Ohio Health Department website outlines how the state of Ohio and FEMA, under emergency protective measures, will set up non-congregate sheltering for those who are unable to safely self-quarantine in their place of residence and to isolate those diagnosed with or showing signs of COVID-19. The facilities are designed to hold people who've been exposed and don't need hospitalization, and those deemed asymptomatic high-risk individuals needing social distancing as a precautionary measure. In other words, there can be nothing wrong with you except positive on the fake test that they're knocking on doors to administer, and you could be taken out and put in one of these places. The Ohio Emergency Management Agency is in the process of identifying public and private facilities that could be repurposed as sheltering facilities. The order directs public colleges and universities to make available vacant grounds, buildings, and facilities, which, based on what I talked about yesterday, is going to be most of them, for temporary use as non-congregate sheltering. Colleges and universities providing these facilities will be seen as performing a public duty and will be immune from civil liability under the order. It takes effect immediately. It is currently due to expire in 90 days or at a time to be determined by the Department of Health. Well, as you know, we're 180 days past flatten the curve. So once they institute something, there is no expiration. There is no expiration at all. According to Interim Director of Ohio Health Department, Lance Hines, the order is being passed to avoid an imminent threat with a high probability of widespread exposure to COVID-19. Really? Centers for Disease Control. Look at the Centers for Disease Control's website. 9,600 people died of COVID-19 since the beginning of the year in the United States. Solely COVID-19. It is not known whether people suspected to be exposed to COVID who can't or refuse to be isolated at home will be forced to be housed in the facilities, although numerous respondents to the directive expressed this concern. In New Zealand, they're doing exactly that. I wrote you a while, so let that sink in. We have camps in Ohio. You can be forced into quarantine, taken out of your home, away from your family, if you are positive and asymptomatic or show any signs of COVID. So make sure that you don't cough in public because you might get hauled off. I wrote you a while back about my mother-in-law dying alone in a nursing home back in April. This is a continuation of the story. My father-in-law has been in and out of the hospital since June, and that included a 2-week quarantine at a nursing home. He came home and had to go right back to the hospital. That finally resulted in the diagnosis of an infection that required surgery. He was 2 weeks, so they sent him back to the nursing home to gain strength. This resulted in another 2-week quarantine. Only one sister was allowed to be with him in the hospital. She called my husband yesterday to say that he can no longer walk and immediate family can come see him the next day, which is today, Monday, August 31st, 2020. My husband just came back from the visit to say that his father is already unconscious and they do not believe he will last for 24 hours. There are 5 children, but they had to go in shifts to see him for about 10 minutes. So I asked him when he planned to go back tomorrow. He said he can't. They had to say goodbye today. This is insane. He's not even dead yet. He may wake up and no one will be there. He could last a week. So the family is now just sitting around waiting for a phone call to tell them that he is gone. I agree with you. This is criminal, this person writes. You read my email about being forbidden to see my mother at Edison Christian Nursing Home. Since then, I've sent links of your video to many people so that they could see not only my problems, but the problems of others who've been forbidden to see their loved ones. Thanks to my sister, a Facebook page did a live show here in Michigan on my family's problems concerning visiting mom, and that person encouraged people to contact the home. The man who did the live show watched your video too. Isn't it funny that suddenly the home has granted me a visit? 3 weeks ago, I mentioned my mother had lost a lot of weight, but the social worker dismissed it, saying she lost slowly. Now, after a conference call with the nursing home, that same social worker expected me to be so grateful and thankful because suddenly the rules had changed and now I can visit my mom. Ridiculous. It's not only politics as many would think, but also the medical profession and the politicians have teamed up together. I don't trust any of them anymore. I know I said this in a previous email, but I want to emphasize that a Michigan law from 1945 gives the Empress Whitmer the tyrannical authority to lock us down until whenever. I'm now involved in circulating petitions through Unlock Michigan to get this law on the ballot to be repealed so it will never happen to anyone's loved ones again. I'm a woman of faith in the Lord, and many friends told me just to accept this. I kept praying, and the Lord kept opening doors. So funny, your video today was about a so-called Christian organization. It appears these people are not true Christians, but I won't get into that. We're living in very deceptive times, and the Bible certainly shows us that. So, some happy news. At least this woman gets to see her family. That's not always the case, right? But again, how we treat the least fortunate in our society says a lot about our society. And I think that this is the society that the criminals want to create for us. One where we treat people this way. One where we treat people the way I talked about adolescents yesterday. This is what these people think is acceptable. What kind of people are they? The state of Hawaii is turning the H3 freeway on Oahu into a mandatory COVID-19 roadblock checkpoint, blocking traffic in both directions and subjecting travelers to mandatory testing. It means that Hawaii is being rapidly transformed into a medical police state, which will soon morph into mandatory quarantine camps like we've already seen in Australia and New Zealand. Testing stations will be set up inside the Hirano Tunnel in both directions of traffic to maximize the number of individuals who can be tested. The news network goes on to explain a bizarre requirement that people who have been tested are not allowed to exit the H3 freeway until they reach the very end. Once individuals have been tested, they'll be required to continue on to either end of the H3 before using alternative routes if necessary to continue in transit. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You're going to have testing checkpoints where if you go through a certain pathway, you have to get tested in order to continue. Does this sound okay to anybody? It doesn't sound okay to me at all. Here's some happy news. Dr. Scott Atlas had said from the beginning of all this, he was a real outspoken critic, and now he is advising the president. He's in the White House. He's argued that the science of mask wearing is uncertain, that children can't pass on the coronavirus, and the role of the government is not to stamp out the virus, but to protect its most vulnerable citizens as COVID-19 takes its course. He's a real radical guy, and he gets vilified in the media all the time. So the bottom line is he's arguing to let it take its course. The bottom line, most people infected by the coronavirus will not get seriously ill. Our health director actually said that in the beginning, and that's turned out to be true. At some point, enough people will have antibodies from COVID-19 to deprive the virus of carriers, and we call that herd immunity. You might remember a few weeks ago, I reported on three studies, I believe, that were done in UK, Sweden, someplace else, where they actually found that a lot of people already had antibodies to COVID-19 because they had other coronaviruses, and it doesn't have to be exactly the same coronavirus. Those protein fragments give you some immunity. So anyway, Atlas pushed for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to publish a new recommendation last week that people without COVID-19 symptoms need not be tested even if they were exposed to an infected person. And of course, I think that was a step in the right direction. We'll see if the states follow that advisory. In a tense coronavirus task force meeting in which the guidelines are debated, Atlas angered Dr. Robert Redfield, the CDC director, and Dr. Birx, Mrs. Birx, she doesn't hold a medical license. But it's Atlas' embrace of herd immunity that has alienated his colleagues the most. And boy, if you want to just watch the fake news at its best, go online and enter Scott Atlas and herd immunity and watch the apoplectic response to it. And by the way, herd immunity is how we have dealt with viruses forever. Okay, that's how we dealt with all the seasonal flu. I mean, it's just the thought that this is so radical, you got to vilify the person who's talking about it, is just almost unbelievable. And this whole idea of testing asymptomatic people, what are we doing? What are we doing here in Ohio? Knocking on doors, testing people so that we can scare the heck out of people with cases while the hospitals are empty and there is no crisis. So anyway, just a couple things to remind you of. Fall semester formally starts next week. If you're going to participate, Pam Popper at MSN.com. If you want to talk about careers, PamPopper@MSN.com. If you want to participate in our Make Americans Free Again conference calls, same thing, email me, go online, look at the complaint. If you haven't done that yet, I really encourage you to get online and look at the complaint that was filed. I think it is worth taking a look at under the legal section, and also the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of supporting documents, which I think are spectacular. So, kind of a short video today. I have so much to do, There's never ending work to do. But soon I'll be able to tell you when our new book is coming out. Soon I'll be able to give you some more updates on the lawsuit, and watch for announcements on our websites and that sort of thing. And of course, next week in video clips, when you can have an opportunity to meet Tom Renz, the brilliant attorney who drafted that fabulous complaint that I talked to you about on Tuesday. And stay tuned. It's going to get real interesting out there, and I think a very positive sort of way. Listen, it's been great talking with you this week. As usual, pass this on to others who you think might enjoy learning the truth about all of this. Join our effort. The more people we have involved, the faster we can bring this to an end, and we need numbers. So make sure you're out there talking to people and getting them to join with us. MakeAmericansFreeAgain.com, WellnessFarmHealth.com, PamPopper@MSN.com, and back to you next week with more news.